most of you know, I'm Ramin Mohammadi. I'm the Associate Provost, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves too. Sandy, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sandy Barganier. I'm a professor in health promotion and wellness. And I think, Liz, you recommended me get on this group with Ramin, and it's just been so exciting. So thank you.
I'll wait for my hate mail. I'll await it in my.
Then we have Eric. Eric, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Eric Goodnow, Assistant Director with Campus Technology Services.
By the way, I'm just going based on the order of people on my screen, so there's no particular order here. Tracy, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tracy, Associate Registrar. I am in charge of creating courses in Banner, and I do sit on the undergraduate curriculum committee, so that's part of the reason I'm helping Ramin with the project.
And I have Jared here too.
Hi, everyone. Jared LeMay, Registrar.
All right, so we decided, we'd been considering this for a number of years. Some of you may be familiar with efforts on the part of UCC to post where things are on their website. You may be familiar with this fantastic spreadsheet we keep in my office, trying to figure out where programs are in the continuum of all the places they need to go. But we haven't really had a product that enables us to take it from A to Z. And that will require a bit more explanation on what that actually means to us. So we bought into a product called Curriculog. This product is owned by the same company that hosts this other system called Curriculog. Some of you may know that our catalog is housed in Curriculog. So part of the purpose of choosing Curriculog for managing curriculum updates, proposals, whether they are courses or full-fledged programs, was because we believe that we will have some leverage in moving this information as seamlessly as possible into our college catalog once we actually get things approved, whether they are programs or they are courses. So we assembled a team. We have been working with our consultants in who actually do Curriculog nationwide, and we've been building pieces of it in a sandbox. So what you will see from us today is the demonstration of the product in the sandbox. So we haven't really moved the content into our production version of the system yet, and we haven't built all the forms we're going to need. You can imagine we need a lot of forms, and I can speak to that a little bit shortly. What the system lets you do, just in general terms, is build a form. UCC, many of you may know, has a form already that I believe they use a Google form where you submit a new course or course update with. So Curriculog lets us build forms. These forms can be at least as elaborate as they exist currently with Google Forms that UCC uses. I saw at least somebody, I think Carol, you guys don't use an actual form, right? It's just a Word file that people submit for grad council.
Right, we just have a guideline that they're supposed to follow. We don't have it on a Google form.
Right, and I have
it's for grad studies.
That's right, and I have their guidelines. So first thing that we are able to do, and relatively easily, is to build forms in Curriculum. So new course submissions, course updates, new program submissions, program updates. These are things we can build relatively easily. And we can build them for undergrad and grad because they're not the same. They don't follow the same path. as they get approved and so on. So the other point, back to the leverage concept I brought up earlier, is that if there is information on a course or program in Curriculog, right, the one that houses our catalog, when you decide to update something, it brings that information into Curriculog. So you begin with what's already in the database. So if you're building, you want to update computer science program and you want to add a course or drop a course or whatever, the proposal will no longer need to be left and right. It would literally be bring in computer science, tell the system what you want to drop, and it actually turn it into red, and tell the system what you want to add, and it turns that into blue, and then you know whoever along the way needs to approve this will know exactly what you tried to do. As some of you have attempted to do this, and you can assume I probably see 40 or 50 of these every year, it's not always completely clear what people are trying to change. It gets a little bit murky along the way as people try to do. So it's pretty easy, I think we'll find it to be, to bring an existing course in or existing programming and make some modifications and then start the process from there. The other huge advantage we think we're going to have, Eric is on the call, as you know, he's part of our group. We haven't really initiated that part of the process, but we think we can do automatic updates to Banner as well. So you may be aware that we literally put course descriptions in 3 or 4 different places. So it would be really, really good to put it into one place and then it would go to all the places it needs to go. So the other advantage we think we can get out of this process is the implementation of more automatic updates in Banner. So you don't have human error where a course is left unchanged in one place and changed in another place, or credits are changed in one place and not changed in another place, and so on. So the last piece I'll share is that we've really begun to like the workflow for this product. Now, just to explain broadly, the concept of workflow is, so you initiate something, where does it go? Who needs to look at it? Who needs to approve it? Who needs to be informed? Whatever. And it's a fairly, we feel at least that it's a fairly robust and relatively easy to use system with skip logic. So if some council or committee or whatever is not necessary, you could just skip over them. You can design it that they contextually they are not necessary. And the right people will see it, the right people will need to approve it before it goes to the next step. And ultimately it would land. We haven't been able to do it, right? Because we're in a sandbox. So ultimately it will land in the college catalog, whatever it is that we updated or added or whatever. So before we get going with our demo, does anybody have any questions to ask about this? All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing I will do is to show you this form that we're going to use, right? I'm in the administrative side of the system at this point. Again, it should be pretty clear. It's called the undergraduate course new for 22-23, and it's just a sample, right? So that's the second one in this set. And if I click on the edit button for it, you can actually see the form, right? I can't really do the form here, right? I'm just showing you what the form looks like. I'm also showing you the structure of the workflow. So on the left side is the form, on the right side of the screen is the workflow. if you have been filling out any undergraduate curriculum committee forms, it should be identical. And I have to tell you, UCC, as far as I know, is planning on changing some of this. So it's probably not going to be exactly the one that would roll out in production, because I think UCC has some intentions of updating it. But it literally has like 9 sections to it and a lot of content. So you can see the form on the left side. Everybody can hopefully see that form. And on the graduate side, frankly, they're not terribly different, right, Carol? But they are different a little bit. There may be elements that grad council is not as interested in, so we wouldn't add them. I think, I don't think they have any extra stuff that they need, as far as I know. There's so much stuff in here, frankly. So you can kind of tell it follows exactly the UCC form on the left side. So it didn't really take us long to build this, right, Tracy? I think I would say pretty quickly, once we learned how to do it, it was pretty quick to create the different components of it.
Correct. Yep.
And we kept it pretty similar to the way UCC does it, right? We didn't really deviate from the way they build their forms. I do want to spend a little time on the right side of this, just so that everybody gets a sense of how we design the workflow. The first thing I will say is that this is just a sandbox, right? This doesn't have to be the workflow, but I think it pretty closely resembles how we operate with courses. And this is, by the way, a new course, right? It's a course that shouldn't exist in our systems at all. So originator would be somebody like me, right? I'm a computer science professor. I go on, I propose a course. The first step, and of course, this is something we don't have, right? The originator is also me, where we're going to work with Curriculog to learn whether we have to have the originator step or not. It seems like rather redundant, as you will see in our demo. But we also fully understand that we needed to be able to tell the system where to go back to in case something is not approved, right? That's really why it's there. Originator is the location that a proposal goes all the way back to if it's not approved at some point. We will speak to that as we go through the demo in the way it's going to work. The second step of the workflow is the registrar. We learned that one of the things UCC likes to do is to make sure somebody goes and checks the system where a course number is not already used, right? So CSC 111, you know, we want to make sure if I'm going to propose that course, we want to make sure it doesn't already exist. So that's the job of registrar in that step. It's just a review step to make sure the course is actually a new course. I think UCC uses that already implicitly, right? I think Tracy serves on UCC as a liaison, and that's one of the things she's expected to make sure for UCC. The step we added here is the department chair. We learned that, I don't know to what extent grad council has experienced this, but I can tell you undergrad has told us they have experienced this more than once, where the department chair doesn't really know one of their faculty has submitted the course. I mean, to me, that's a really big no-no, right? I mean, we are making the assumption in our councils that when somebody lands in our hopper, is coming from the department, but they preferred for us to allow faculty to submit these, right? You follow what I'm saying? Initially, my thought was, let's just the chair only be permitted to submit this and we can control those roles. But you know, the way their MO is to have anybody submit it. But they agreed that it would be wise to add the chair in the process to make sure that that is indeed what the department wants them to submit. Shouldn't be a big step, right? I mean, if I know that as a CS chair, if I know that my department is submitting a course for a new course, it's not a big step, but it guarantees that the chair affirmed that it is actually coming from their department. I know Carol is in School of Ed. I don't know if anybody here is in School of business on this call. I can't see everybody anymore. But each of these units, these schools have their own committees, school-wide committees that review curriculum before it moves forward. So you can see these are all grayed out, right? And these are not, these are white, the little circles. You don't have to understand that, but what it means is that these two steps are conditional. So if the course is coming from the School of Education, this step becomes mandatory. But if the course is from anywhere else, this step is just skipped right by. Similarly with School of Business, if the course is coming from School of Business, that step is mandatory. If not, it gets skipped right by. So the skip logic works well. We have tested it. It just goes right by those steps. Since, for example, in our demo, the course is going to be a computer science course. Of course, it's me doing the demo, so there you go. You're going to get a computer science course. And by the way, we made Sandy chair, so congratulations, Sandy Bargani. Once it passes through those two steps, it gets to the undergraduate curriculum council. And in this workflow, you can see we separately articulated the council and the chair. Everybody sees that, right, on the screen. In our thinking at first, we thought, oh, do we really want everybody to be able to update, for example, edit the proposal? And we thought there are occasions, instead of sending stuff back, UCC just collaborates with whoever originated the proposal and just makes those minor edits and moves it forward. Doesn't send them back all the way back to the beginning, starting the process all over again. So we wanted to give edit privileges to the chair, but not to the committee. Now we have had second thoughts about that. Potentially, Tracy explains that the MO for UCC is that they have different members working with different departments, and they actually edit based on that dialogue. So they actually, it's not just the chair. So we may change that. We may just get rid of this step and let the committee do its job. And once it's approved there in the committee, then it just moves on to faculty assembly. The faculty assembly step, there's only one person we designated for faculty assembly, and that's Liz, who's of course on the call. Not in our demo, by the way. In our demo, I am the FA chair. I have no desire to be FA chair, so it's just for the demo purposes. And we tried out something interesting where it would pass through if it's not approved after a couple of weeks. Kind of mimicking what we do at UCC. Those of you who may know, we put on the screen, it used to be the Elmo, but now it's much more sophisticated. It's a Word file probably. We put it on the screen, and if nobody complains by the following FA meeting, it moves on. You don't really have to approve it again. But again, we were just trying it out. We know we can make it just move on if it's not acted on in any particular way by Liz, but we can take that out and just make sure Liz clicks approved on each of these courses. It'll really be up to the governance on how they want us to build it. We have the option to do it. And once approved by faculty assembly, it goes to the registrar, which basically is the conclusion of the pathway here. And our expectation is that it would then update the catalog based on whatever change it is. And notice that we call this the 22-23. So when we say update the catalog, we're not talking about the production catalog, right? We're talking about the next catalog. Even in our sample, the language is going to be that it's the next catalog that is getting updated, not the current catalog, which is not something that we typically like to do, changing the current catalog with any information. Just jumping back to you know, we're not going to demo this, but you see there's a lot more circles down here with the undergraduate program new. Our consultants were a little surprised that it was more involved to do a curriculum update than of this type than it was to do a course update. I don't know. I have no experience with a lot of other campuses, so I don't know why they felt that way. But those of you who have been involved in program updates, it does have a lot more steps. So that's why it looks longer. Each of those circles is a step that needs to go through an approval. But we're not going to demo that for today. I think I'm ready to demo, but let me pause and see if anybody has any questions or any concerns at this point before we get moving to the next step.
Michelle had a question in the chat about possibly including the Excel office if there's internship courses or GST.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's a fantastic point, Michelle. We definitely plan on including you. We just don't know exactly how we're going to do that because you're not in any particular school or college, but you know, we've had to figure out a lot of things. I'm sure we can figure that one out as well. But you're right, we will need to provide permission for an entity to deal with GSTs. Absolutely. Anything else before we move forward? All right.
Ramin,
Yeah.
this is Rebecca. I was curious. I know that we're planning on using this for not only course kind of updates, new courses and programs. Will this also include things like micro-credentials moving forward?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, my long-term plan with a tool like this is to bring in other units like general education, right? I mean, for general education, we propose many things, as you can imagine. Sometimes new courses, changing writing plans. I mean, you name it. Anything that requires a workflow, we really could build it in here. And it should make it easier for us. You know, we have worked with APHIS to some extent, but this is tailored to this type of thing, right? To rebuild this in APHIS, it is just way too much work, and there's no way we could actually do it. But anything that requires that approval, sequencing, it probably is a candidate for being rolled out in Curriculog. But, you know, we'll talk about timeline of rollout at the end of this. But obviously, we need to learn and make a lot of mistakes and hopefully not make them again and again and again. So start a little smaller, but important, right? I mean, courses, we have a ton of courses that come through that require updates and a ton of courses that come through that are new. So as an example, that would be a good candidate to start with. We'll learn a lot about how well it behaves and interacts with our community, and if it actually fulfills its promise, right? I mean, the promise is that we add some controls over where things go. People can know where things are, and at the end, it just goes into our systems without us having to cut and paste and whatever that we always have had to do before. All right, so I got out of the administration side of it. This would be a fairly typical interface for most of us who would get on. If we have already built proposals, they would be here and their status would be here. Any messaging from the system would be here on the right side. You can see the messaging is kind of random because obviously we've been just playing in the sandbox. So I'm just going to start a new proposal. And doing so, I'm just going to use the sample that I showed you, and that should initiate the process for us. I need to pick my department, and computer science is it. I'm not clicking School of Ed or School of Business because, of course, computer science is not in those schools. these are the variables that actually control that skip logic that I shared with you earlier. And then I just put in the CSC course that I want to build. And I'm just going to call it 111. I think I should know this. I'm pretty sure we don't have a 111, but I guess Jared is going to check that in a few minutes. A course for CELT demo. Seems like a good title for it, don't you think? And it's a great CS course. Take it. And it may have a prerequisite or it might not have a prerequisite. So and you could click that or not, and no correct. And we're going to teach it fall spring. Again, this follows the way UCC form works, to be clear. We didn't invent this. Must have credit, so 3-credit course, and it's not repeatable. And that simply means it's not one of those courses you can keep taking and getting more credit for it. If you fail it, guess what? You get to take it again. That's not what this means. So no reason to fill that part. No lab, and any information associated with the lab.
Make sure you click no lab, Ramin. There you go.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for watching out for me, Sandy, because you know it was going to reject the form. If
That's
I didn't
right.
say that.
And we didn't practice that.
And lecture, they ask for a list of attributes. So we put them in there. I'm not exactly sure who validates those clicks, but they're just there because UCC asked. Is this a new course to be added to an area of study? Obviously, you understand what that could potentially mean. Majors like English have areas of the study, so you could at least articulate where it's supposed to plug in. Needed a new demo course. And those of you who've completed these, you know how you tend to answer these things. Some information, become a programmer. And more about becoming a programmer.
So one of the things, if I could just jump in, that we're going to check to make sure that we can cut and paste from like Google Docs or Word without it getting screwy into these
yeah.
templates.
Yeah, I think it should work, but we haven't really tested that out that much.
I did test it a little this morning and it does seem to work.
Good.
And Ramin, you may need to scroll back up to the areas of study question. I think that was a required field.
Okay. Areas of study.
Oh, there you go. Click no.
There.
Good catch.
Is that the
Tracy.
one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
See, we have a great team here. They don't let me screw up too badly. And then I think we must be getting close. No books. And no bibliography. And no need for any of that. And I can just go ahead and validate and launch. So thanks to my partners, I didn't make any mistakes. Otherwise, I would have had an error on this page, right? If I left something out or whatever.
Is there something on that form that indicates if it's a required question or if it's one that you can skip?
Yeah, there were
A
little
little-
stars next to them.
Oh, there were? Okay, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, there were stars next to the ones that had to be. And as you
Okay.
notice, I missed that twice. So it would just send you back basically if you screw it up. And Tracy and I have a lot of experience in going back and filling in the stuff we didn't fill out. So the form has been launched. You can see, and the system tracks that on the right side of that form. So any questions so far? It seems pretty straightforward. And you can
Once
see,
it's, oh,
go ahead.
sorry, once it's launched, can you go back and edit?
I don't think you can edit. Can you, Tracy? I don't think you can edit at that point.
I think it has to be released for you to edit again.
Yeah,
So-
it can come back to you, right? I mean, there would be a step that you could reject it and it will come back to you.
Prior
see.
to hitting that launch button, there is a save button, so you could keep it in your own queue if you save it and come back in and finish the form and edit it as many times as you need. And then when you're ready to push it off to the committee, then you do the launch proposal.
Exactly.
One other quick thing, was there an option or there wasn't an option for summer courses, and should there be an option for summer?
I think there was, but maybe we missed it. And I think we also have a check all that apply for any of the terms offered, but we can
Okay.
certainly add it if it is missing.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So what you will see is that when I go back to my main page, right, my main page in this thing, under my tasks, CSC 111 appears. And if on the right side here, I'm going to click approve and submit that. Now, I want to be clear. I am acting as me, so we're going to be working with our consultant to see if we can skip that step. And in fact, I have to approve my own before it moves forward. But that step is there because everything goes back to the originator if it's actually rejected. So, you know, that's the reason why it's there. But if we can skip it, I think everybody would be happy. Now that I submitted that, I believe this is supposed to go to Jared. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if Jared could share his screen and tell us if he actually sees this thing.
See it.
Magical.
Success.
So Jared can obviously open this and make sure that, you know, check off that number being new or whatever for computer science. And whenever he's ready, he can then basically do what I did.
Yep, so here I'm on my tasks. You do have a couple other tabs available to you if you want to search through all proposals. But I'm just going to focus on what I have to do. And you see we've got a couple of them floating around, and I got the nice visual to say, apparently I rejected something. I like doing that. We won't do that today though. So if I click on CSC 111, I get to see proposal. And it's basically representing everything that you just saw for main input. On the right-hand side, though, I've got a little bit of an audit log of the history of what's gone on, and I can toggle the information that shows there using the navigation tab just off to the right-hand side. So it gives a little different view, little bits of information. There's a spot for attachments. But I'm going to click on decisions because that's what I have to do. If I'm looking at this specific proposal, I can approve or reject it right here and then make my decision. But I can also do that for one course at a time or for multiple courses at a time right on the My Task area.
This is for you, Liz, by the way.
Yep, I can just come in here and check all three of them and let them rip, but I've only looked at one, so I'm just gonna approve it here, and it should move on down the line to the next approver.
Okay, that's me. Says I can't share. Okay.
I'll stop.
So Sandy is the chair of computer science. Let's be clear, all of these roles have to be totally assigned exactly. And we have many of them identified, but we still have a little bit of work left to do there.
And so I click on my tasks and there's the course we're talking about shows up. And again, I can click on it, read it, make comments just like Jared did, or just click it and approve. And off it goes. And I stop sharing.
And I think after that, it should then come back to, I believe, 3 of us, right? On the UCC committee.
UCC council. Mhm.
Correct.
Right, so I know it's back in my hopper at this point.
Yep, I
Uh,
see it.
Hopefully it's in Tracy and Sandy's hopper
Mhm.
too.
Yes.
Obviously for Sandy, 2 roles, right? I mean, she was the chair of computer science in our sandbox, but she's also a member of UCC in our sandbox. So similar to what we already explained, we can make a decision about it or comment about it, whatever we need to do. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. So I think my task at this point with that is concluded. And once all 3 of us proceed to vote, I believe it should then land in Tracy's as the chair. As I explained, we put her in there basically a second time, thinking that we may need her to be responsible for any edits agreed upon with the originator. Judy, dear, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I did, but I was waiting to see if you would have answered it. I know I was a little late, so I don't know if I missed this, but will this then send forward to the priorities and planning, the paperwork and everything? So it would go to the chair and then the chair would spread it to the rest of us, right?
That's a great question. This one is actually, Judy, a course proposal. So it doesn't involve priorities and planning or Academic Policies Council or any other council for that matter. Only UCC is involved in that particular case. But you're 100% right. You will be there in the context of program approvals, new programs or program updates that would go to both, say, grad council and priorities and planning.
Oh,
So-
awesome. Okay.
And
Thanks.
you will have access to all the proposals in that context for you to review and approve. Are we at the next step, Tracy? I think
Yes.
we approved it.
Yep.
Do you want to go ahead and share your screen and what you're seeing at that
Mhm.
point?
Okay, so in my tasks, I have the CSC 111. I will go in. And the workflow status, again, is just a summary of all the different steps and where it is currently.
Right.
I'll go into my.
And with the committee, you can see all 3 of us have approved it for that previous step.
Yep, you can see here. And we have control over how committees work and what approval types they have, whether it's a certain percentage, if it has to be 100% or if it's only 50%. So we have some control over that. Down here is the under UCC chair role. That's my demo role. So I'll go into my decisions and I can say approve, make my decision. I will mention that for the couple of chair roles that we have, committee chair roles, there are agendas that can be created. So if Jeremy for UCC as chair wants to create an agenda for the UCC committee, he will have the option to create an agenda, so he doesn't have to type out a list of what courses are going to FA or similar, or if Liz wants to pull that, there are some agenda tools that are in here.
Yeah.
Okay. I can stop share.
So I believe once Tracy signs off there, I believe then it comes to me or back to me.
Yes.
So I'm going to share my screen again here. So now I'm acting as Liz. You can see the proposal is been through the first 5 steps of it, which we created, right? The originator, followed by the registrar, the department chair, the committee, UCC committee, the UCC chair, and now it's sitting in FA. So when Liz is ready, basically she can just pick them all up and approve the selections. Or she can just jump into them, make a comment, reject, whatever. That's what she gets to do.
Right, but I
So-
imagine as chair of the assembly, I would just be approving based on a positive vote from the assembly. I guess it's not really my role to sort of be in judgment as the chair. So I think the chair would click through here as a confirmation that the assembly has approved a program change, or that UCC reported it out, right, without objection. And-
Exactly. We haven't had that happen too often, Liz, but once in a while, people see a course on the screen that concerns them,
Right, right.
and then they follow up. And that would be the reason for rejection by you,
Right.
where those concerns were significant enough where faculty decided that it needs to go back for some reason, and perhaps modifications or whatever. So that would be the only reason I can see you actually reject in a context of that type.
Ramin, this is Sandy. Did you want to inform Liz that there's a 14-day window there to decide, and then it automatically gets approved?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning it. I'll mention it again. We just put that in, Liz. It was
Right.
just to say, well, generally our MO is to wait 2 weeks, next meeting, to just move it on if nobody complains. But of course, that system fails if we have a break or we have a winter thing or summer thing. So, we are actually having second thoughts about
Yeah, I mean, I
having
guess I'd have second
bypass.
thoughts about automating, especially right away. I mean, as we input this too, I mean, people could be sick, right? People could lose a week because they're in bed,
Yes.
feeling like death warmed over or whatever. So, yeah, so I don't know about the automatic stuff.
Right.
It might have to
And-
be a manual approval.
And as Jared showed you, this screen is going to show you all of your, all of the ones that are there. So it's just click, 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 and approve them all type of a situation. So, I don't think we really need this, just move it on after 2 weeks. But listen, we're just trying to learn, right? So
So let me say this, I mean, I'm wondering too, for program approvals, typically for FA, whether it's a resolution or a program revision or a new program, right? There's a form that we now have as a Google form that gets sent to the president, and Mary Ann Perry would put it in front of the president, get a signature, scan it. So now it's all electronically. It was on the lovely 3-copy ditto press paper. But with the pandemic, we moved to this electronic signature system. So I'm wondering too, while resolutions might still use this form, I'm wondering if we can actually substitute out most of what faculty assembly passes are program revisions and stuff that go to the desk of the president. So
Yeah.
it would be nice to actually put her at the final approval here to replace that recommendation form in that case. And then recommendation forms could be more about resolutions for requests of policy changes or statements or things like that.
sure.
Um,
Well, I to be honest, I figured once we have a new president, we'll
Yeah.
figure out what they want to do.
What their preference is. Yeah, I
Right,
think so.
because you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
think Deborah would have wanted to be logging into Curriculog and do this.
Well, she
to be
wouldn't. I think
honest.
Deborah would have had Mary Ann Perry or Ellen, you know, I think one of
Oh,
them.
exactly.
Right. I mean, because I think that's really what happens. I think what happened was Mary Ann, you know, we went to electronic, and I actually think it was a printout that was put in front of her, and she signed them, and then they got scanned and sent back to me.
Yes.
So that's the system we had set up during the pandemic to replace the hard copy system.
No, you're 100% right. We'll definitely have to figure out how to deal with that last step, and maybe
Right.
this may
And
be
then,
news
yeah,
to
yeah.
this
Oh,
may be
yeah.
news to you, but
Right.
but the
Sure.
way we've always done it, our MO on the 7th floor is that when the president gets any proposals that have to do with the academic side of the house, she then asks the provost to make sure, is this what you signed?
Yeah.
Is this
Good.
what you approved? And if Scott says, yeah, we approved this and for this or that reason or whatever, and whether it's a policy or program update or whatever, she doesn't see courses for everybody's benefit. The president does not see courses. But in the context of program updates or policy changes, the president definitely seeks the provost's opinion on whether or not what is being put in front of her is something that he had already approved, and the same as what he had approved. We all know that we're in the process, those of our are embedded in the process, that what begins as a proposal doesn't end the same as it did when it first began. So it's kind of a insurance at that point that in fact, what is being signed off by the president is the right thing for us to do. And then we act on it, right? Send it to SUNY or whatever we have to do at that point, or put it in college catalog. We are going to build that part too in this thing, but exactly how it's going to be framed will really partly depend on, the will or interest of the president at that point. So I figured I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, the step
Yeah.
of the process, which probably will be dictated by the, personality or frankly, the skill set, digital skill set of whoever we hire. And so I'm just going to go ahead and approve. And I believe at this point, I no longer have it. I think it now should circle all the way to the registrar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
And okay, Tracy, you see it too, or Jared, do you see it?
I can see it's in Jarrett's queue. Yep. One thing Jarrett had mentioned in the chat was when a course proposal is submitted, there is also an impact report that can be pulled. So if you're revising a course, you can run the impact report and you specify which catalog, whether it's grad or undergrad, and you can see where that course lands and where it currently lives and what the impact will be of that course revision or changes that you're making, so that you know what majors and minors you might be impacting as you revise things.
Oh, that's a fantastic point. Thank you for making that, Tracy. And we really like that feature, right? Because most of our committees or councils don't always know exactly the broad impact of a change, right? We certainly have had that before, believe me, where some people were not necessarily happily surprised to find out a particular part of their curriculum changed, like from 3 credits to 4 credits. And they didn't know about that. So I think we should be able to see that at all levels if we want to double check to make sure it's good. And Jared is the last step of approval in the sequencing we built. And we're making the assumption that once he approves it, it actually lands in the college catalog. Again, we can't really test that until we're in production, right? So we're just assuming that everything will work the way it has so far with everything else we've done with it. All right, Jared's screen tells you that it's there.
Yeah, and you get a full review of its history as it went through the process. No, we haven't tried this yet. What happens if I approve it? It's not going to try to talk to Banner. It'll just disappear, right?
I think so. I think it'll be
There we go.
all done, and it probably will require the existence of the back end for it to finish up, which it doesn't exist at this point. All right. I think that's in a nutshell what we wanted to make sure we showed you, and but let's open it up to some questions if people have some.
I don't know if the question is a question comment of, I don't know what to do, or this is probably going to suck and I don't know what we can do about it. But I think what I really perceive is even, the experience, this remote pivot and people stepping up with tools to Blackboard is someone's going to want to design a new proposal. They're going to know nothing about Curriculog, right? They're not going to attend Curriculog sessions. They're not going to want to watch a video about Curriculog. And they're just going to, I feel as leadership, or maybe for APC, who's ever an APC, someone is going to have to deal with, I have to upload it in this program and I don't want to use it. And you're going to need to hold my hand and walk me through it. So while I think the software is a dramatic improvement about the system that we're using now that relies too much on oral communication between committee chairs and all this about where something is and where it went, did we lose it, and the way it creates a standing documented record of how things have gone through. So this is a great improvement, but I don't know, as we think about implementation, I'm just, even back when our earliest discussions of adoption, I don't know, I'll be looking for suggestions, advice, strategies of how we bring faculty in to understand that this is the system we're going to use without having to walk something through. When I think of all the program proposals that come through, I would dread someone in governance leadership position having to walk every single person through how to do this.
So I think that's a 100% legitimate point. I'm really in favor of soft launches of this type where, we move this to production, we make sure UCC is happy with it. I'm particularly talking about new courses and updates and so on, APC and so on. For sure, we have to collaborate with APC and partisan planning to make sure what we've built there actually makes sense to them too. But people can continue, at least I would imagine once we're done, could still submit the way they have done it before, but I think we would like to see some people have a bit more braveness and submit using the system to start with. And I will also have to say this, I really think, and I wouldn't be saying it if I didn't, that this form should be identical to what people now fill out as a user, right? I mean, if you're
we're not
proposing a new
changing
course,
content, right? We're changing the way where it sits and how it an information flow or document flow. We don't have to change the way we document.
So I'm hoping the general view of the faculty on how to do this or what to use to do, submit a proposal on the new one should be identical to what UCC already does. I feel. I mean, it is obviously a different link or whatever, but it should be the same. And my other hope, I know Sandy wants to speak to this and I want her to, but my other hope is that people will really like the ability to update. You no longer have to reproduce the whole, you just change the part. And one of the reasons I favored this was that I think if we have a database with the information in it already, why are we recreating that in Word or something else? And then we then have to do it again at the other end, right? I mean, the system has to be updated still. And if it has a good way of exhibiting what's being changed, and I think it does, that would be favored by faculty to use down the road. But, I think we're going to have a soft launch. Sandy, you were going to say something, sir.
So Liz, that's a great question. One of the things I kept saying is, where's this going to be housed? How will people find it? How will they know about it? And, you know, the reality is if they're doing an undergraduate course, new course or revision, they're going to the UCC website anyway. So it's going to sit there. We talked about having it sit in the provost's.
Yeah, I think that's probably the
form.
easiest of the
Yeah,
transitions to make.
Right, have the provost forms where we have new programs sitting,
Yeah.
you know, so put it there, like have it in
Mhm.
multiple locations. The other thing that's going to happen, and this is where I was going like, oh my God, you know, thank God Tracy's doing this because she's amazing. Is that, you know, every semester, like if names change, like we had, you know, I had nothing to do with that. Tracy did, and Ramin did. That, you know, every council member, like their names have to be all connected to this and that stuff changes. So there's going to have to be a communication pretty much every semester, at least every year, saying who's the new department chair, who's the new council chairs, who are the members of those committees, so that they can be all attached to the workflow. To me, that's a big, like, oh my God, who's going to make sure that happens? And you can say, oh, Tracy will. Okay, it's one more thing Tracy has to do. So, you know, and if Ramin gets hit by a bus tomorrow, you know, oh my God, thank God, you know, he was in charge of this and had a computer science
Be
degree.
careful, Ramin. We need you.
Exactly.
Look
So,
both
you know,
ways.
we have to make sure that, you know, there's a lot of people that know about this, and whether it's department chairs or program directors, because it changes, it's going to change and update all the time. And we have to put those new people connected into the workflow.
Yeah, I
So-
think, I
yeah.
mean, even though department chairs don't do, I think as this goes more fully on board, you're gonna have to take a captive audience of chairs at a department chair meeting at least, and give at least a brief overview of this is the system we're all now all expected to use. And so if there's program revisions and changes coming in your department, this is what we'll be expecting.
Go ahead, Judy, go ahead. Yeah, I think you have another question.
Hi, sometimes I feel out of place, but sometimes I don't. For those of us who are going through this training, and I know it's very hard with my department's schedules and productions and everything, can I bring up at least a plug for this program at the next faculty meeting, talk to Jen about it, our interim, and maybe we can, those of us who are here, can do small little presentations, at least we want you to know about it. This is here sort of thing.
Absolutely, start plugging in. I actually think sometime in the spring, earlier in the spring, probably because we get busy later, I'm hoping to pencil in maybe Ramin to just come talk about it. You don't have to do a full demo. You know,
Yeah.
maybe we could go a quick click through, but really have reps on board. You know, I always believe in this redundant chain that goes down through chairs and one's going through FA reps, and there's some redundancy. So hopefully it gets out to let people know that this is going to be the expectation about programs and things like that.
No, I appreciate your points, both of your points. And, you know, it's taken us a while to get to this point, right? To be clear, none of these things are designed to be turnkey. They never were, and we didn't expect them to be. And as Sandy said, there is a whole logistical component to this, but, you know, it's not my first rodeo with building logistical components for things that need to work smoothly. My friend Chris Munger is on the call, and we didn't have academic probation. Guess what? Everybody now understands how that flows, that is involved in it. It's about 40 different people that are directly involved in academic probation advisement and success plan development and checking them off and so forth and so on. We had nothing, right? I mean, we didn't have self-evaluation, we didn't have success plans, we didn't know how do you connect the right people to. So you buy tools, you buy Starfish and you build it so that it can manage some aspects of things. We buy forms that enable you to have students do self-evaluations. You know, you start with a vision of what are you trying to do? How are you going to try and help people? And you know, we have some interesting problems that come up with the workflow associated with program updates and undergraduate undergraduate courses and graduate courses. So it's one of those where you say, well, we're going to keep band-aiding this, and we have done a whole bunch of things to band-aid it, but you know, this is going to change everything, right? I mean, it's just going to be a different process. Nobody should ever have to ask my office, where is my stuff? Well, just look it up. right there in Curriculog. You know exactly where it's still sitting, if it's still sitting someplace, and you just connect with them to find out what the status of it is. So I think that transparency is part of the reason why we really wanted it. Having the ability to enable people to perhaps gain some productivity by not having to type up everything, because if you're updating something, you just change the piece that you want. And for our people on the registrar side, or in Eric's group on the admin programming side, we're also really hoping there's like a $24,000 consultant fee built into this contract for this year to build pieces that will enable the banner ecos to be used to modify banner content. I mean, that's one of the things we keep dealing with, right? You change it in one place, then you go somewhere else, change it over there, then you go to a third place, change it there too. And then if you miss any of them or don't quite exactly match them up right, now you have the same information supposedly in 3 places, but they don't say exactly the same thing. And, we really are hoping to avoid any and all of those types of inconsistencies, which they don't have to happen too often, right? They only have to happen once. And it's a problem for whoever acted on something based on what they saw that was incorrect. And those reports that Jared mentioned, the full impact reports, I'm really hoping they would help councils, because we may look at a particular program being changed. We almost never look at what the side effects of that change are everywhere else. And I think an impact report like that would enable us to better understand what's the broader impact of that modification. We have had faculty change a 3-credit course to 4. And believe me, there have been a lot of upset people at the other end of it once it was concluded, because now their curriculum changed, right? Literally, you added credits to their curriculum for graduation without any approval, right? None of us saw it. Program planning didn't see it. APC didn't see it. Grad council didn't see it. It just magically all changed, even though no one approved it. And I really don't want us to be in a world where those things just happen as side effects. They really should not. We need to make sure that they don't. All right, any other questions for us? Well, you've been a great audience. Thank you for your input. And I wrote a bunch of notes down about the things we're supposed to do next too. And if you wanted to do more or see more, by all means, please ask us and we'll be happy to talk to you and work with you. We're obviously going to be working closely with Carol and Zoe, who is chairing APC now, and Dean, who is chairing partisan planning, and so on. And those are specific councils who will be intimately using the system. So to me, those are the deriving groups in what it's going to actually look like and exactly what the workflow for various things are going to be. We're just learning how to use it. We're going to move it to production and make sure everybody's role and so on are correctly assigned. And we didn't mention this, Eric is on the call. It'd be a single sign-on type of situation. You just log in using your username, password at Oswego, and there you are. It's not the way it is in the sandbox, by the way. We have to log in with a whole different username, password business. But in the production level of this, we will be able to let people log in with their credentials at Oswego. And then they can see whatever they're allowed to see, right? I mean, and we have to decide what that is, because you can be extremely transparent with this material. You can literally put all of this on the web, right? What I had on my screen, you can have it on the web, so that everybody could see what programs we were proposing, what we were changing, what courses we were proposing, what courses we were changing, whatever. And some universities are very transparent. And some universities that use the product are not at all transparent. I think we're probably going to land closer to as transparent as we can be, to be honest, because I really think more people need to know what's being changed and what's being updated, frankly, than fewer people needing to know what's being changed or being updated.
So what's
All
the
right.
timeline, Ramin? When's this gonna, who's gonna start it off? When are we gonna start using it?
Well, I think the first step for us, for our group, is to move this to production and make sure it all works there in production. I'm talking about new programs, program updates, new courses, course updates. These are the 4 things we're going to start with. And for undergrad and grad, right? And they're not the same forms because they have different workflows. But once you have that, once you have built that, then really it's a matter of working with you for you to make it available to people who want to make a proposal. And whether or not, I mean, I'm of the mind that we want to have a soft opening with this so that people who feel more confident and comfortable submit this. And if they don't feel that way, perhaps they can just keep sending Word files. I don't have anything against Word files, by the way. It's just, we end up doing a lot of work at the back end with those Word files to get them. And worse yet, we scan them. And so it's totally useless after you scan them, or practically useless after you scan them. So I think, in time, in the next few years, people are not going to remember all those left and rights. And that's the way I vision this, right? I mean, I don't think about tomorrow. I just like to think we go on this path and at the end, people aren't going to remember the way we used to do it because it is just the easier way to do it, period. That's what I want to see is, I don't want people in 2 years saying, I can't believe we have to do this. I much rather copy paste the catalog copy from online and paginate it again on the left side of a 2-column thing, and then copy it on the right side too, and then change it or whatever, and then get that what do we call it, the routing sheet. Send it to the wrong place and then say, why are you sending it to me? It needs to go to the dean first. Well, then the dean gets it, then they do the wrong thing. Wait a minute, we got to have it in the provost office first. Believe me, this is my life, right? So it kind of cuts out all of those BSs that people have had to deal with before, because it just gives it to the right people, right? I mean, hands it off to the right people to look at after. All right. Thank you, everybody.